Hello, my name is Keshwani. That's Keshwani, Keshwani. I have been solving math problems for GRE out of this book here, practicing to take the GRE general test, the 10th edition. If you do not have this book already, purchase one immediately. The problem that I'm about to solve is the one that you're going to find on page number 279, quantitative comparison question number 8. Number 8. Let's take a look at it. They give you a graph here, so I'm going to reproduce the graph over here. Six and 5. They give you 2 points, point P and point Q. Point P and point Q, and they simply want you to compare these two quantities. In column A, they give you the quantity A. Oh geez, it's not 6 and 5, it's A and B. 6 and 5 was over here. They want you to compare, in column A they have the x coordinate of this point, point Q. The x coordinate of point A, x coordinate of point Q is A, and the y coordinate of point Q is B, which is what you have in column B. They just want you to compare and tell them which quantity is bigger. Some people had trouble with this problem. It's number 8. Only 44% of the people who took this particular exam got this particular question right. 56% missed it. Let's see what's going on here. What we have to understand here, what we need to understand here is, what do this A and B represent? That's the key part there. Once you understand the concept of A and B, the rest is downhill. What do coordinates of a point represent? For example, here, if I were to go from this origin, which is 0, 0, to point Q, what does B represent? B represents this height right here. Perhaps it wasn't such a good idea to put a Q there after all. B, the y coordinate of point Q, represents this height, and A represents this is your A and this is your B. And similarly, if you were to do the same thing, here, this distance from here to here, that's your y coordinates right here, and then this distance from here to here, let's give them names so we can talk about it. This is point P. Let's call them A and B. Point is OA. O is the origin. O to A, that's our x coordinate, which is -6, and OB, which is our y coordinate, which is -5. From that, I can figure out the slope of the line. Slope of the line PQ. The slope equals the rise over the run. I want you to look at point P. Don't worry about point Q right now. If you look at point P, the rise is this part, OB, which is -5. And the run is -6. You see? That's your x coordinate of point P, which is -6. which of course negative 5 over negative 6 is just 5 over 6. 5 over, because negatives will disappear. 5 over 6 tells me that this line that I'm dealing with is positively sloped, which of course it is because I can clearly see that it's positively sloped line, hence the negative drop out. That 5 over 6 ratio of change in y to change in x will remain constant throughout the entire line. Why? Because it's a linear line. This line doesn't have any kinks. It's not a curvy line. It doesn't go like that. It doesn't go like that. It's just a straight line. It's just a straight line. On a straight line, the slope is constant. If the slope is constant, then this ratio that they give us, of rise over run, that ratio has to be constant throughout the line, which means this distance, this change in y, which is what this is, rise, which is your change in y over change in x, that ratio is 5 to 6. For every 6 units change in x, right here is my 6 here, for every 6 units change in x, y goes up by 5. And that ratio is going to stay constant all the time. What that tells me is that I do not know exactly what a and b are, but I do know that they are always in this ratio. For example, I'm going to put them here now. I'm going to erase all of this thing because I need the room here. I'm going to erase this part here because I need the room. For example, if from here to here, this distance right here, if that happens to be 5, or rather change in x, if that happens to be 6, then y will have to be 5. If this distance from here to here, this distance that I'm talking about here, this distance here, if that happens to be 12, then this distance will have to be 10. The rise will have to be 10. The ratio is 5 to 6. If this distance from here to here happens to be 3, then the other one has to be 2.5. The point here is that the y coordinate is always going to be less than the x coordinate because the slope is less than 1. As you can clearly see here, 5 over 6 is less than 1. If the slope is less than 1, what that tells me is that the numerator is smaller than the denominator. Voila, that's it, end of story. The numerator is smaller than the denominator because the slope is less than 1. It's less than 1. Therefore, this a, the top part, which represents the, sorry, that's where you have to be careful. I almost made that mistake. A, which represents the x coordinate, which is 6, and b, which represents the y coordinate, which is 5. Now it doesn't have to be 6 and 5. I'm just giving you one example. It could be 6 and 5, it could be 12 and 10, it could be 3 and 2.5. The ratio is going to be 5 to 6. For every 6 units change in y, for every 6 units change in the horizontal distance in x, the y will change by 5 units. Therefore, the ratio is 5 to 6, which means your a, which is the x coordinate, is going to be always more than the y coordinate because this is on. When we write the slope, on the top goes the y coordinate, on the bottom goes the x coordinate, the rise over the run. And since this is less than 1, that tells me the change in y, which is what b represents, is less than change in x. The answer is A. That's all. Just hold 1 second, I want to see you in the back of the clock. That's basically it. I don't know how good of a job I did explaining this thing. I hope you understood it. But that's where people are having trouble. Vast majority of people who miss this question, my feeling is that they're sitting there and they're wondering, how in the world can I figure out the exact value of x, a and b? And they are exactly right. You cannot figure out what a and b exactly are, and you don't need to figure out here. These are called quantitative comparison. You're simply asked to compare the two quantities, not compute them. So if you compare them, that tells me that because this ratio is less than 1, the y has to be always less than x. That's all it is. And this represents the x coordinate, this represents the y coordinate, and therefore the answer is A. I hope you found it helpful. If you wish to get hold of me for personal private tutoring, face-to-face tutoring anywhere in Connecticut, Massachusetts, even Rhode Island, some places in Rhode Island, or I go as far as Manhattan, take the train and go over there. If you need to get hold of me for personal private tutoring or face-to-face tutoring, that is, or over the phone or through the internet, online tutoring, if there is anything that I can help you with for the GRE or GMAT or SAT for that matter, go to my website at www.prep4gre.com and send me an email. All right. You can also go to this URL, www.KeshwaniPrep.com. Thank you.